So if you, oh, thank you, bestie.
Welcome.
So, um, so on behalf, and Liz, I hope I'm not stepping on your toes.
Do
I'm
it.
kind of just taking over since you're one of the presenters.
You're fine.
On behalf of the Professional Development Committee, it is my privilege to introduce today two amazing colleagues. First of all, just like I said, my bestie from the University of Miami, Liz. And another one, Kaitlyn from the University of Georgia, who will be our presenters today for our Pro Devo Hour. So thank you both so much for your time that you're going to share this amazing onboarding process. It is the season, as we all know, in residence life and housing when we are bringing on new professionals. So we figured this would be a great opportunity to hear from two that do this on a frequent basis. So I will be moderating the chat. I will be looking at things as we go along, but I'd like to turn it over to our presenters at this time. So take it away, y'all.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can we see the presentation on the screen? Awesome. All right. So Caitlin and I will be talking a little bit about how to optimize your onboarding process, specifically how to transition your new professional staff, as well as some tips and tricks for those who are going to be supervising those new staff. As Wesley said, 'tis the season, and so some of you are probably going through this summer in prep for new staff in June or July. Some of you may just be wanting the information to improve your current processes now. So we are going to be sharing our best practices in our roles and what we've used at our institutions. By no means are we experts, but we have found that we've got some pretty good processes that we hope you all can take something from. And we'll offer this at the end, but I know Caitlin and I are both open to you all reaching out to us after. If there's something you want to steal, something you want to come up with and talk more about, we're happy and open to share all of our thoughts and information with you. So to start us off, let's talk a little bit about you.
Yeah, so we want to hear from you all and your perspectives and kind of hear a little bit about what was your onboarding experience like. We know that depending on maybe when you started, what level you started at, the time of year, all that kind of stuff may have impacted that. And so wanted to just start this with kind of an open call for responses of what was your onboarding experience like? Did you feel like it prepared you for your role? And what did you feel like was missing from that onboarding experience? And I think one of the conversations that Liz and I have had during this process is that onboarding isn't training. The goal of onboarding really is to prepare new staff to be at the university, to feel as though they are set up and ready for success. But talk to us a little bit about your experience with those things.
And you can speak or put in the chat, either way.
So I'll go ahead and go. Hi, y'all. This is Kayla Hamilton. I think onboarding depends on kind of your level, what position, and how many. There's a difference when you're onboarding with just one person, and then if you're onboarding with two or three other people. And I think coming in with two or three other people really feels more like buddy system or a cohort, someone you can call and be like, do you know what's going on? Because I don't know what's going on. And also, I think you guys made a really good point. Onboarding and training are two very different things. And I think often, as I've been thinking about this, thinking about what's the purpose of onboarding and how is that different than training, I think are two things that I sometimes struggle with, because I think there are some things that you need to prepare your staff for to get them ready for training, but does that then bleed into training?
Thanks so much for sharing, Kayla. And I think that's part of it too, is that mindset of the goal of onboarding is not to train you, but it is to set you up for success when you go into training. And there is definitely a lot of bleed into those pieces. It is a gray area, of course. But I know that at UGA we work side by side with our training committee so that we can make sure that it is a smooth handoff. And that's really what it should be. it's a handoff to the training experience that they're getting, but it is not the same experience. So thanks for sharing that, Kayla.
And I think just to add to that too, when you think about onboarding, there are also systems that you're onboarding them to, right? So in the first 2 weeks, maybe everyone has StarRes, everyone has Maxient. Yes, that's training, but that's a software system, no matter what position you're in, you're going to be using. So that's actually part of onboarding for the office culture and the office processes, which is very different than training for your role specifically. So I think that's also another way to kind of help separate what should be onboarding and what should be training.
Mm-hmm. I see Corey added in the chat that he felt he had a decent onboarding experience until he had to start onboarding other people. And that is real. The minute you become a supervisor and have to onboard another human to your department, you realize where those holes lie. And I think that's part of what Liz and I will talk about a little bit today is also how do you prepare a supervisor for that? Because if you don't feel prepared for it, how do you prepare the folks coming in as the new staff members? I think the other piece that Kayla brought up that I want to mention again is also dependent upon what level you are arriving at. Entering as an entry-level professional looks very different onboarding, as probably a lot more pomp and circumstance than arriving as a mid-level or upper level or SHO. At that point in time, your peer pool is much smaller. You don't have that cohort to be like, hey, what am I doing? And also training for mid and upper level looks very different if anything exists at all. And so I think that's the other thing we think about is how do you ensure that regardless of the time of year, regardless of the level at which someone is onboarding, how do you make that as smooth as possible for them to have success at your institution?
And I know we're not going to get to talk about it because that would be a whole other session, but a good thing to think about is how are you offboarding your staff? So I think about transition reports. I think about, projects in place, projects in progress. How can you help those non-entry level staff who maybe don't have a colleague or they're the only one in that role? How can you utilize the staff member leaving in a good offboarding experience to then use that as a transition for an onboarding for the next position coming in?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on. If you have other thoughts about your onboarding, please go ahead and continue to put it in the chat. So we're going to dive into our onboarding processes and how we have worked to be able to transition that new staff member and supervisor successfully. So there are 3 stages of onboarding. You have first is your communication, whether that's from application to arrival on campus. How are you keeping in communication with your candidates as well as with your staff that you've hired? What are those pre-arrival logistics that you need to consider to prepare this person to come to your campus? And then what are those first 2 weeks of onboarding look like for your new staff member that's coming on board? So I'll start off with communication. So here at UM, when we hire a staff member, regardless of level, and everything I'm going to talk about is regardless of level, I send them a welcome, congratulations for your hire, welcome to the team. Here is an onboarding survey. So I'm going to click on this and hope it shares. So this is for me as the person assisting to onboarding is all the things I need to know from this person to get all the things they need to come in. So it'll show everything like your business card. Can you all see that? Did it go away? Okay, great. What they want on their business card, what they want on their name tags, what are your pronouns? Do you want them on anything? Polo sizes, dietary restrictions, if they're living on campus, who are they coming with? When are they coming? So it's all the things that I would need as a person preparing for it. Yes, I will share it in the chat to be able to know what they need to be comfortable. I also include, how do you like to be recognized? What are your favorite treats? What do you need from your supervisor during high stress times? Anything you want your supervisor to know. And then this report is generated and I email it to the supervisor as part of their transition process. So they have a couple of little things for them to get to know their staff member before they even get here. And then identifying a point person. We'll talk about this later, but who is the person that they are going to be able to go to either until they get to campus and then once they arrive? Who is that person they can contact if they get lost, if they don't know where to go, if they have a question about HR benefits or anything like that? I have the unique opportunity at my institution that I'm the person that does all this. I recognize that's a privilege. So other campuses, maybe that's the hiring manager, maybe that's a buddy that they've been assigned to welcome them. Maybe it's their boss's boss, who knows? But identifying one person that this person can go to for any all questions is super important, and I think will help that transition for that person coming to your campus. Liaising with HR, we all have been through HR processes. It's hecka confusing. If you don't have a relationship with an HR person, I strongly encourage those who are hiring managers to have that relationship, because I can't tell you how many questions I've gotten about benefits, and what does this mean and what's the difference between this and that. And while I'm not an expert, we all had to pick our benefits. And so why not help them navigate through what some of those terms are that maybe we are familiar with as more experienced professionals, and or how that particular program works here at your university. Helping them through what the pre-requirement checks are. So if you require a background check, make sure that they have the information for that. If they're going to bring a partner or a pet, have you sent them all their partner and pet paperwork and what all that stuff needs for anything they need to do before they get to campus. And then this is my baby. I'm happy to share. We have an onboarding website that I send in that welcome email for every person who starts here. This is a one-stop shop for everything a new employee needs. So it has everything. So before they arrive, all the things they need. When are they going to be off? What does it mean to live in South Florida? Link to the human resources website, benefits. If they're living off campus, this is a whole separate website on how to live off campus, where to look for rental apartment units, realtors, things like that. That onboarding survey that I showed is actually here. So when I do that, I say, go ahead and click the onboarding survey and share it with me. We have an onboarding guide that I'll show this, that they will use. I have one for live on, non-live on, and then non-res life staff. And it's essentially like a to-do list for them. So it has everything about the university, fast facts, all the acronyms, how to get things, so they can always look back to this document through their first couple of months, but it has anything and everything they would need. And then like how to transition, like you should set up your office, you should set up your voicemail, things like that. So this is on there as well. But the other cool thing that I think people don't think about, and this took me a really long time, is obviously you want to onboard to your university, but then also personally. So what it means to we live in Coral Gables, even though we're in Miami. So we have a team recommendations page of everything. So where do people go for bars, beaches, dentists, doctors, hair care, museums, pets, veterinarians, all the things. And so each of these are links to those websites. It's not obviously a be all end all list, but if you're like, I don't know where to get my car fixed, come here. This is where our staff go to get their car serviced, where things are, what to do for fun. So we're always adding to it as people find new places and things open in the area, but it's stuff like that we don't really think about that is also important for someone transitioning to your institution. It's not just about the work, it's about the personal life as well. But it has, all these other things that they can look at, but this is their one-stop shop for when they get here. So, if they're living on campus, how to put in a work order, how to get to Wi-Fi, things like that. So that is our onboarding website. It took a bit to do, but it's definitely not impossible to create if you have an ability to create a page off of your housing page. This link is actually not searchable. So unless you have the link and I give it to you, you can't get to it because it obviously has other confidential paperwork and things like that. So, and yeah, so here's our onboarding website. I will put the PDF of okay, it's not supposed to be searchable, but whatever, it's fine. Either way, I will put the link in the chat for the onboarding survey as well as the website. Go ahead, Kaitlyn.
So when you're working towards things like getting a website that your institution may not be there yet, this is how we approach those things. What I will say is that Liz's website is my end goal and where I would love to get us to be at some point in time, but we're not quite there yet, and that's okay. And so that does not define the fact of their onboarding experience. And so goals, let me get there. That's really what I want to be at. But right now, the way that we do that pre-arrival communication is through a welcome newsletter. And so all of our new staff receive an email/newsletter like you see below, which has a lot of the same information in this format. And so if your institution is not quite at a place where you can add a page or it's got a lot of red tape to get that, these are some things you can do in the interim while you're working towards that larger goal. And so this is the welcome newsletter that our staff got this year as they were arriving. And so some of the things we talk about is kind of their first couple of days, Yes, I'm happy to share the newsletter as well. It's on Canva, so you are welcome to edit and make your own version of it. So it has their kind of first couple of days, what they can expect. It's an introduction to our leadership team because while, yes, you can find all of our photos on the website, it's kind of nice to know who you're walking into and meeting on those first couple of days. We also introduce who their supervisor is. I don't have that page on here. And then just some things for them to know. Required dates for the year. What are those blackout dates that we all know exist already so that they can go ahead and know ahead of time? And then what to be aware of as they're onboarding and whatnot to the university and to Athens. Similarly, we also have a favorites page because while Athens is fantastic, it is not Atlanta, and people often have to realize that we are an hour and a half from Atlanta. And so we have the favorites page of where do people get their hair done? Where do people go to take their cars, their pets, their kids, all that kind of stuff. So that has been something that we've also worked to include in this as well, to showcase what Athens does have to offer. When you aren't big shiny city, it does help to kind of showcase what does life look like in your community, and helping them find those places when they come to the institution. So, and then the second page, yes.
Hey, it's Kayla. When do you send that to them? Do you send it to them like a certain, like 2 weeks before they arrive, or like what's the date?
Yeah, so this welcome newsletter goes to our graduate and professional staff. It goes out to our professional staff usually 2 weeks before they arrive, and our graduate staff a month before they arrive because it goes to them at the same time. And
Perfect.
so generally that is sent 2 weeks to a month ahead of time. This is not their first communication with us either.
Okay.
So this is, at this point in time, they already know who their supervisor is. They already know their placement in community. So this is really a, hey, get ready. It's almost time. Like, we're excited to have you here. Here's kind of your screenshot of what you can expect as you are preparing to come to Athens.
Awesome.
And
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Mm-hmm. And then for ours, I put it,
Okay,
they
good.
get their first welcome email for me once they're cleared from the university and they're ready for hire. That's my indication to send out my information to them.
And real quick, we are getting comments, and we will work to make these materials available to those who need it. Getting asked about the newsletter, about the really bomb website Liz has created that I personally know I want to take. So thank you all for the chat. Keep going, y'all.
All right.
And then this is the second part of our newsletter. So it's really just similar to what Liz had. It's the lingo for UGA housing. We all have our own stuff. And so we know it gets overwhelming, and we share that as well as our departmental info in terms of what is our org chart look like. We are a big organization, and so understanding where you are in that is a big piece of that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so with the pre-arrival process, thinking about things that then your new staff member may need assistance with above and beyond the stuff that we shared. So do they need assistance with relocation? If they're living on, do they get a relocation stipend? If they don't, what else do they need help with? Do you have a preferred moving company that your university uses? Things like that. Setting up access behind the scenes and behind the scenes items. So obviously this person's coming and there's a lot of things to do. But for me, and I'll show it in a little bit, I have an Excel document with a checklist of everything I need to do for every single new staff member that comes on board. So everything from requesting their email to requesting access on their cane card so they can open their front door. So thinking about what are those little things that will make their welcome and arrival feel more make them feel more at home as quickly as you can. What do they need to know before arriving, which we covered in all of our newsletters and that website? Do they have an arrival checklist? What are the things that a person would need to know for their first day? Like, do you send them an email saying like, hi, we're excited to welcome you the Friday night before they start, if they're starting on a Monday. Here's what your attire is for your first day of work. Here's the expectation. Like for us, we take our ID picture on the first day. So we tell them, you're going to take a picture on Monday. Please be picture ready, whatever that definition is for you. Lunchtime is usually at this date and time. So what are the things that we take for granted that a new person would not even know about your culture that would help them along and be less nervous on their first day? And then creating that first 2 week training / onboarding schedule. What does that look like? And then if you do some sort of a department announcement or welcome, if you don't do that, it's really cool. And we copy,
Mhm.
I know Kaitlyn does the same thing. We copy the department on the welcome when we announce that they've been hired and when they're coming. And then
Mhm.
you always see everybody responding to that. It's an expectation that if we send a welcome email out, that everybody says, hey, welcome to the team. So it's just
Mhm.
something little that takes no time at all, but can really help make a difference in a transition. So this is my, I cut my Excel sheet. There's more than this, but I just wanted to put some of these in here as a sense of like, what are things we're not thinking about? So for me, as they're coming, what are all these identification markers that I need to know for them to give them all the access? Do you have to request their parking permit? Do you do a cell phone stipend? If so, what's that paperwork look like? They need to get access. Are they getting a travel card or a purchasing card and doing that paperwork? Is their office clean? Is their setup complete? And then all the things that I have to request access for them that is not me, that someone else has to do. So I have a whole list of things that I need to do for them. But this helps keep me organized to make sure that no matter who or when you start, you all get the same experience. So it's super important for us. And I know this can't always happen. Like when you walk into your office, you have your business cards, your name tag, and your swag right on your desk on day one. And that's something I can't do if I don't order them like 5 weeks beforehand. So what are some of those things that really don't seem like they're easy to forget, but you can, and just keeping a running tab for me, especially if I'm onboarding more than one person at a time, I got to kind of just find my way to keep track of everything that I need to do for each individual person.
And similar to Liz, so here at UGA, we do a couple of things. One, you'll see kind of a copy of what our email announcements look like for our staff, and then as well as the welcome home sign. A big part of the focus we have also is on the experience. So what is there, like Liz said, what does that first day feel like? Are we making sure that they understand some of those things that we all just know about our institution and our department? And also when they walk into their space, is it ready? And so have we flipped it? Is it prepared? Are there boxes on the desk? Has it been cleaned out since last person? So the checklist that you'll see here is actually not what I do. Some of the things you'll see my name in there and are things that I do for the entire department and for RPS, but other pieces are things that every supervisor is responsible for doing. So recruitment is part of my role, but unfortunately, unlike Liz, I don't get to do it 24/7. And so because of that, with that in mind, this is where the supervisors step in to help take some of that balance on. And so ensuring that this is something that they're taking care of with those pre-check-in calls, making sure that they're sending in their headshot for our announcements or whatever photo they want to use, making sure that their apartments are ready to go if they're live-on staff, their offices are ready to go, like I said, and that they've ordered their business cards. So similar to we also do a survey, very similar information. And that has really made the onboarding process so easy because then they also arrive and they have their favorite snacks in their office on their first day of work. Or they have a drink ready for them when they hit their wall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so those small things can really make a huge difference in that first day experience. And what is that first impression? We all know that, each of our institutions have different red tape and different abilities. I know that I was talking to a group and they were like, yeah, we're ordering all these things. And I'm like, yeah, no, we don't do that. There is no ordering anything. So the swag that they get in their office here at UGA is a little limited, but how can I then create that experience in other ways? So we create welcome signs and we make sure that, shirts from the past year from that community are in their office or a community that they work with and that kind of thing to make that as intentional as possible. The other thing they will do is on their first day of work, they will have, of course, many meetings, but a one-on-one with their supervisor. And so making sure that that supervisor is prepared for that one-on-one is big because we know that it's not your whole job to be onboarding, but that is a big chunk of your job on that first couple of weeks of that new person. So that's everything that we prepare on the backside of things here at UGA for new staff members joining us.
And one little note too, if your institution allows you to do that. So like for us, if a new staff member has a partner or a kid or a pet, we actually create a welcome sign for their family and their pet as well. So it's something super simple, but it kind of brings a smile to their face when they're like, oh, you're welcoming my dog too, or you're welcoming my kid too. So that's
Right.
not on here, but it's definitely something if you're able and allowed to do that, that makes a whole lot of difference. And so we're going to put it back to you. What were your first 2 weeks like, if you can remember? Maybe what were your favorite things about your first 2 weeks of work as part of your onboarding process? And same thing, speak up or put it in the chat.
I would say my first 2 weeks were very hectic. Even my first day, I was moving in, and then while I was just organizing my office and putting stuff up, a bunch of stack of keys were dropped at my desk and was told good luck. And then it was already training the next week. So yeah, but luckily enough for me, it was transitioning from being an RA to then being a graduate resident director. But yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I think to Kaitlyn's point earlier, when you go into a bid manager, upper bid manager, the pomp and circumstance is definitely gone. And it's, hey, you're here. And now that you're here, fill in the blank XYZ. And it's that being able to hit the ground running because they're expecting you to already come in with a skill set, be a generalist or whatever it may be, and plugging you into meetings and being able to hit the ground running. I call it the tour of the campus show, where they're basically, hey, this is our new employee, this is how they're going to interact. And now that you've met them, this is the expectation. So
Mhm.
I agree, Wesley. I think I look at all my experiences because I've kind of moved around a lot. Oh, not a lot, but kind of a lot. I don't know. Either way, entry level, it was kind of interesting. My first experience where there's a lot of staff transition. So I didn't get the welcoming that you should have gotten. So for me, I made it I made sure to not do that to other staff members coming in, right? So that I learned a lot from that experience to say, just because I didn't have this doesn't mean that you don't deserve this, right? So I want to make sure that you have all the information that you need to feel welcome on campus. But like even recently from here at Wesleyan, what I do love is that my supervisor, we worked at Mercer together previous to this, but she's campus life all the way. So the sign, the swag was just automatically there. But then of course, same as Wes. Oh, here you go. Um, here's all the stuff that you need to do. And you have a meeting and assignments are happening right now. They're not assigned yet. What? So I do think it just depends on, the type. I mean, I'm at a tiny college, as you say, small at Mercer, but it's really tiny here. And I think it depends on the size and the department and kind of the expectations and your role too. But I do think it's important for us to still try to do the same thing as we're seasoned professionals, if we're in the director role or assistant dean role or whatever it may be, that we do exactly the same thing we would do for entry level professionals as well, just because I think we do miss some of that going into our roles because it is a lot. I mean, you have a lot going on, especially depending on when you're moving in. But that to me helps retain staff and helps them to be able to understand the expectation that you are excited for them to be here and that you want them to feel a part of the team automatically. So I know for myself moving forward, that's something I think about. Like whenever I continue to move up, what can I continue to do to make sure that I still bring that res life, spark whenever we do it for our grads or our RAs and those types of things, whether it's door decks or whatever it may be, to make sure that they're feeling the same way and taking them out to lunch, those types of things. The first day, if you can't afford the whole week or whatever it may be, but I think it's just all about, continuing that as we move up instead of just focus on entry level. But you're right, I think it goes away as you move up a little more, but it does depend on, I guess, the institution as well, how they handle it.
For sure. Other thoughts before we move on? All right. So with that, what does their first day look like? That first day is crucial. So what are the stakeholders they may or may not need to meet the first day? Do you have some sort of meet and greet? We try to do a coffee hour for the whole department to just come and mingle and meet the new person or new people if there's more than one. Or we've done like a lunch on their first day and invite like their peer group and then their supervisor. Or depending on what the position is, if it's a director level, we'll invite their direct report and maybe their supervisor. So being able to just kind of create a non-scary way to kind of introduce them to the department in a fun way, as opposed to just knocking on doors and like taking them around the office. Do they have to have any HR meetings? Like here at UM, their first 3 hours is an orientation. And so that's set, can't change that, but do you have that for their as a requirement at your institutions? Giving them a campus and office tour. We have a U statue on campus, so it's a tradition on their first day. We take them to the U statue and take a picture and send it to them to commemorate their first day. So are there little traditions that you can create on that first day for your new staff, regardless of level? them having a supervisor one-on-one either on day 1 or day 2, depending on, it's hard for us to do it on day 1 because we only have them for 4 hours after their orientation. So they get them on the morning of day 2. But how can you involve their supervisor in that process? And what is the supervisor's responsibility, which we'll talk about in a few slides. And then providing that new supervisor, a supervisor checklist. I know Kaitlyn shared hers a little bit ago. Mine will be next. But what are the things that they need to make sure they need to do, either from an HR requirement lens, from a department expectation lens, and then on mine, I give them a one-on-one agenda. So if they're like, I have no idea what to talk about with this person on the first day, I give them a list of things that they should cover or have to cover within the first week. So if it's not in that first one-on-one, they'll have a second one-on-one. They pretty much have one-on-ones with them every week for the first month. And so you got to get all these things done at some point before their first month. So this is my supervisor checklist, and it changes based on who they are. So if they're res life, non-res life, hourly, salaried, internal to the department or external, this list changes. But this is kind of the core list of the things that the supervisor needs to make sure they're done. And if there is a deadline, what is that deadline? As you can see, the one-on-one bullets there, and the things that they need to cover. There are some required trainings that they have to do in their first 2 weeks. So the supervisor has to assign that. And so all of this stuff is in there, but this gives them a starting point so they're not going in blind on what they need to do, especially if they're a first-time supervisor. Giving this as a baseline for them really helps to keep kind of things on track and to make sure everyone gets that same experience, no matter who your boss is and no matter when you start. So this has been super helpful.
And so what you'll see on this next page is our formal university housing HR checklist. So this is student affairs and HR have put together this checklist. And so this covers their first 30 days. So these are the things that have to be done within their first 30 days of work. It starts with, these are the things that HR will take care of. These are the things that will happen before they arrive by the supervisor. These are the things that the employee will do. Then it goes through within the first 30 days of work. This is what a supervisor is doing, and then this is what the employee is doing. And so I'm happy to share this as well with folks. But this is what we actually turn this into HR, and this goes in their employee file of all the things they've included. And so this includes, so a lot of this has been included in some other checklists, but this is like the formal, like in their file one. And so it is very detailed. It also goes over all the trainings that they have to take that are mandated and required that anyone has to do as they start here at the University of Georgia. So I'm happy to share that with anyone who wants it. So we'll definitely include that as we move forward.
Yep. And has a similar checklist from HR that are all the HR things. So between that and the one I just shared, that kind of creates this. It's just not as clean on our end for the HR one. And so thinking about the onboarding schedule, we're specifically going to focus on the first 2 weeks, but obviously onboarding goes beyond the first 2 weeks. So this is just a snippet of our schedule. The approach that we take here is, what do they actually need to know right now, and what can be trained on the job or in their formal like res life, other unit training. So if you notice, just really quickly, a lot of the things that they get in their first week are either those software systems, meeting key stakeholders. As you see, if we're providing lunch or not, we tell them. But if you look, their first day, they have orientation, they get their ID card, campus tour, coffee break, central office, and then Teams, because everything we do is on Teams. So that's a day one necessity. But then the rest of the week really gets tailored to what the position is. And so what are the software systems that person needs? Who are the people they have to meet in week 1? And then what are the things that are most important for them? And before we turn them over to their unit or their supervisor for training. As you can see, we also do a tour of Miami because if you've never lived here, you're not going to know where to go. So if they haven't already been taken to like Publix or to the Target or Walmart or whatever, this tour includes not only those personal spaces, but like how to get from here to the metro, how to get from here to our satellite campus. And so we include that as part of the onboarding to onboard them to the city of Miami and Coral Gables as well.
So what you'll see is the RHD onboarding schedule that we have developed. So this is an RHD onboarding schedule that can exist at any point in time of the year. We have two versions of it for anyone who has been an internal hire, so someone who has worked here at the university in a graduate capacity or someone who is transitioning from another role into their role, as well as new to UGA hires. As no one is surprised, when it comes to our non-entry level positions, so anyone coming in a mid-level position or above, theirs are a little bit more specialized and individualized. So we don't have a set, this is everything. What you will see is that anything that's on the internal hires list is something that everyone has to do. Those are across the board going to happen, anything on that first day. But we don't have a set schedule for everyone across the board because it is so individualized for some of our positions. But what you'll see here is that the supervisor is super involved in this process. They are responsible for their employee on that first day, really, in conjunction with what we call the Bulldog Buddy. And Liz and I will talk about that in a little bit. But it really just goes over the internal hire one is exactly what they need for just to get them started in their current role, because they have some of that other context. And then new to UGA is a little bit more detailed, showcasing campus, things like that, as well as ensuring that they feel prepared to transition into training. The thing for us here at UGA is that generally we will have residence hall directors start anywhere from a month to 2 weeks before training begins. And so in that time frame, there will be downtime before they get into training. And so making sure they feel prepared to have time in their office, making sure they have a checklist of things they need to accomplish, as you saw previously, things like that are incredibly important for us. And so we want to make sure that this onboarding experience sets them up for success with that. And they're not just sitting in their office spinning, because we have had that experience before. And that is no fun for anyone because you're just like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? So that is what the goal of this process really is and why we provide them with these schedules.
Mm-hmm. So with that Bulldog Buddy or Cane colleague, I'll just go first because we also assign a Cane colleague to our new staff. It starts as me, I'm their Cane colleague till they get here. And then once they get here, based on their position and what role they're going to take on, they're assigned either a peer or a colleague from another unit that can be their go-to for everything question-wise in the department, outside of the department. We do have a checklist for that King colleague in terms of if you're stumped about if things don't happen organically, how do you further and continue that conversation? But I'll have Kaitlyn talk about her specific checklist.
So this is our overview of our Bulldog Buddy program. And so I love that Kayla still knows the name of her Bulldog Buddy. This is a program that we do at UGA. As someone starts here, they are paired with a current staff member. Like Liz said, similar to the Kane colleague, it is either a peer or someone who is a peer in another functional area who may be at a similar level in the department, that they can kind of go to and bounce ideas off of or ask questions of when they don't want to go to their supervisor or they're like, and just to help start building those connections. It gives them a touch point of someone who is other than me until they arrive or their supervisor when they're not sure about something. And so what this is really an outline of an engagement timeline. We have done this 6 ways to Sunday, I'm going to be honest, because it has been super structured. It has been really abstract. And we find that it is most successful when it is as authentic as possible. So generally, we attempt to pair someone with someone who was involved in their interview process and or someone who was involved in their on-campus interview. And the goal for that really is, it might have been their host. It might have been someone that was in their interview. It might have been someone they really connected with, because our goal is for it to be a connection point and for someone to be able to help support them as they start that onboarding process and as they start that job. We know that the majority of the time in our field, and specifically in our functional areas, our staff are moving from across the country, across the region, out of state. They may be coming with a partner or family members, but they also may be coming solo, particularly when we're looking at our students coming straight out of grad school. Our entry-level staff members are often coming solo and are coming to a new city and a new state. And so this program, the goal of this really is to help define that a little bit for them and make it not feel so lonely as you start somewhere new. So it goes over some of the expectations for them, but really at the end of the day, our goal with this is to provide a connection point and provide that onboarding support that is beyond just their supervisor or myself.
And so you've gotten them through their 2 weeks. So what happens next? So obviously onboarding is not something that ends at 2 weeks. So we just really wanted to quickly touch on the importance of the first 3 months and how to keep that morale and retention going. So for us here at UM, after their first 3 months, I send them an onboarding assessment. So it asks them about their experience from application to through their first 30 days. And what that helps me do is kind of assess the onboarding program, what may have changed as different individuals start at different levels. How can I look to adjust that onboarding? What did they feel like now that they've been doing it for 3 months that they wish they learned in their first 2 weeks? So it really gives an opportunity for them to give feedback about their experience that we can then take and use for future onboarding sessions. During those first 3 months, continuing that on-the-job training, because as we know, you're going to get bombarded with information, and when it's time to actually respond to that crisis, you're not going to remember. So how do you continue to have those refreshers and on-the-job training as they go in the first 3 months? Do they need a training refresh? So maybe they learned how to encode a card on their access card, but they have to now do it 3 months later, and they don't remember how to encode that card. We have different manuals and things that are electronic that we've converted that they can look up and get retrained on as they go. What is the supervisor's role in that first 3 months? So what are you as the supervisor doing to assist and check in with them in those 30, 60, and 90 days? And then kind of revisiting the new. So what they learned in their first 2 weeks, like I said, they may not have used in the first 3 months, and now it's time to refresh them because maybe they're still not going to use it, but it's a summer thing or it's a spring thing, but you felt they need to be introduced to it in the fall. How can you revisit that new and keep them engaged and engaged in their role?
I think that's part of it is we all know that our jobs are cyclical. And so at some point in time, it becomes just memory of us knowing how to do things. But you forget when you're not new that they haven't been through it once before. They may have seen it in another institution, may have seen it in another type of position. But as we know, the work that we do happens on a cyclical basis. So in reality, you're new for 365 because you have 365 days to see what the cycle and the calendar looks like. And so these pieces of the check-ins and the follow-ups are all things that really help with that staff morale too. And I think that's so important because yes, you can focus on the first 2 weeks like Liz and I have talked about, but you don't want to just drop off there. If you just drop off there, you're going to lose folks on a quicker basis because they're not going to feel that sense of support from the department long-term outside of maybe their direct supervisor or the colleagues that they've met or things like that.
Yeah, and so we just wanted to include this 30, 60, and 90-day assessment checklist. This can be used in a variety of ways. So the idea is with this theory is that month one, they're learning their job, they're learning the school, they're learning everything. And so this is where you as a supervisor, make sure you're continuing to talk about the culture and the expectations of what might be happening in those first 30 days. Are there traditions at the university? Are there traditions in your department that they may not realize are things? And so how can you continue to kind of keep the new for them every time something new is introduced? In month two is when hopefully your new employee is starting to contribute. So now that they've got their bearings, now let's encourage them to speak up, use their voice, really be an active participant. And while yes, you're new for a year, it doesn't mean you can't contribute to what's happening right now. So really kind of encouraging them to step out of their shell and to start contributing in their role and on their teams. And then in your 90 days, it's the execution. So the last 30 days should really be the focus on what have you learned in the last 2 months, and then what are you missing? What are the things that you feel like you haven't been able to use that we can start using now? Are there things you want to see in your areas or in your role that you haven't had an opportunity to either ask about, see what happens, or go from there? And then really just kind of pushing them to fly and to really step into their role and have that confidence to continue in the role that they've been, that they're starting in. And so with that, in those 90 days, how are you engaging your employees? So if y'all want to share really quickly, what are some fun ways that you continue to engage your employees, whether they're your direct reports or other colleagues in the department, to keep people motivated in their roles or in your department?
Things we do at VCU is that all new employees do a 30-minute or 45-minute meeting with the executive director, which is now me. And so that happens within their first 90 days. And so that is kind of an opportunity for, upper leadership to kind of pulse check, like, how's that new employee doing? Is the supervisor following this guide? Are they caught up? So it's kind of a good like assessment kind of checkpoint for us, and an opportunity for additional FaceTime engagement, for us to just kind of see, like, do we need to pivot and think about things differently? And there's definitely some trends, I think, since we've started doing that we have learned, been able to get ahead of, especially knowing that we have those, like you've talked about, the cyclical like cohorts that kind of come in. And so how do we tackle those things differently versus when someone kind of onboards, at a non-traditional time. So
Mhm. Others?
We try to hit them right when they get to campus for their onboarding. And so we'll try to get our Res Life team together to actually meet them when they get here to unload their cars, their trucks, all their vehicles. Uh, and then I'm getting ready for onboarding one later. But we do a little welcome basket for our live on staff that has some university things as well as like shower curtains and soap and sponge and like basic house apartment things that they might need right when they, for that first week that they haven't time to go shopping or unpack everything. Some simple things just to get them through the first week as they're unpacking, just to kind of make that ease into it a little easier as we're going and getting them ready for training.
I think one of the things that we do here at UGA that's unique, and this goes back to what Corey was saying about as a supervisor, you didn't realize how much you didn't know until you onboarded someone, is that our student affairs division has started a supervisor check-in after the first 30 days of someone's employment. So you as the supervisor actually check in with our retention staff in student affairs and HR to like, hey, how are they doing? Like, let's gauge where they're at and what support do you need as a supervisor to help continue that success here at UGA? Are they a good fit? What are you thinking about? What are the things that you're noticing? Because by that point in time, you have some of those things and you're like, okay, so I know this person is super great at these things, but okay, I really need help with making sure we focus on this area here. And then they help provide those resources and support and get you as a supervisor connected with those resources that maybe you haven't thought about, or maybe you're not even aware of that are on campus that could be like, hey, this would be really great. And the nice part is that our housing HR is part of that conversation. So maybe if it's an internal housing thing, they're able to also provide those resources and support for that staff member who's supervising our new staff.
I love that idea, Kaitlyn.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I was going to add that our division of student affairs actually does a quarterly like division class for any new hires within our division of student affairs as well, which is helpful because post-COVID with more people working remotely, it's allowed for, especially in housing, our folks that are here on the ground to learn other campus partners that may be working remotely. So that's kind of been nice as well. So thank you for sharing that idea. I'm going to pass it on to HR.
Yeah, we do the same thing here in our division. Is every semester they will say anybody who started from this date prior, please, and it's a whole day student affairs orientation. And then one thing that I'm starting this fall is we have staff in other units that aren't from higher ed. And so we're actually doing an intro to higher ed training session for those who don't have experience in higher ed, but they've come into it by accident for this role, so that they can kind of get the lingo of higher ed and student affairs too. So I'll be starting that in the fall. Just to be cognizant of time, because we do want to leave time for questions, just wanted to include kind of some fun non-salary dependent ways to engage our employees, because we know the budget is real. So are you providing opportunities for them to share their voices or to be heard? Autonomy is a way to keep your staff engaged. Obviously, a little tricky when they're learning their role, but how can you still provide autonomy as a new staff member to your new staff member? How are they supported with all of their identities? So obviously that's also another political conversation that we're dealing with right now, but it doesn't mean that we can't still provide support to our staff and students. Any professional development opportunities that you can provide them that are free. I know I regularly just send out stuff to the department about webinars and things that I get across my listservs to share for them to be able to participate in that are all free. What are the opportunities for upward mobility or succession planning in your departments, and how can you share that when you're creating goals for your staff? What are they looking to do, and how can you help get them there, whether that's internally to the university or elsewhere? provide opportunities for self-care, and also any kind of social opportunities or retreats that your department or division can provide, that aren't very expensive, but can still create opportunities for engagement with their staff and also with campus partners and stakeholders as well. And on that note, we're going to end. So we leave some time for questions for you all. The QR codes are how you can contact Kaitlyn and myself. There are Blink business cards. We'll also pop our emails in the chat as well if you don't want to download Blink. But if you don't know what Blink is, it is a virtual business card. So anyone can scan your QR code at a conference and you don't have to carry business cards, and it will share contacts for you. So we do want to open it up for questions if anyone has any.
And feel free to pop them into the chat. I know for myself, I was typing like crazy, all these cool things that I'm learning. But yes, please give kudos, snaps, whatever the lingity is for the Res Life people these days. Us old facilities folks just say yays. So yeah, what questions do y'all have for our panelists? Presenters, excuse me. Justin, go ahead.
Thank you. Quick question regarding the gotta go my notes again here. The buddy or point of contact. Who would you recommend? Someone who's been in the role for a while, at like sometime around like 2 years or so, or someone who's new in the role who can somewhat relate to them, or anyone?
So I think it depends on the position you're looking for a buddy for. I think you have to be a little individualistic in that of like, is it an assistant director coming in? Is it a residence hall director coming in? Are they coming in by themselves? Whatnot. So for us, when we look at a residence hall director or any coordinator that's on that entry level, we have asked and polled all of our staff of like who's willing to be a buddy. We don't just want to assign it, because if you just assign it, you're going to ruffle some feathers, let's say that. So we always ask for that. There's also just some people who are just true introverts and have no interest in trying to entertain someone else. So that's something that we've done. And so based on that, we then base it based off of who is interested and who we think would be a good fit. I'm going to be honest, most of the time it is our newest staff members who are most eager to be that person, because they want to be that for the next person coming in, because they appreciated having that person available to them. And so as long as someone is doing well in their role, I think it's great to have someone new. But again, you know your staff that are coming in better. And so what are the needs of that person? Is it maybe someone who shares an identity that's beneficial for them to have, like a partner to touch base with? Is it someone who maybe has a similar experience in terms of where they're coming from? Is it that, someone is in a similar position? So like, I think when you think about an assistant director and above, what does that positionality look like? And is it someone that they can learn from, and have someone just to have a peer? Because I think that's the other part about it, is it's hard when your buddy is not someone at your level, because it's hard to like, I need to vent, I need to process, I need to think through this, I'm frustrated by this, those kind of things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other piece too is like, for me, when I got here, my King colleague was the only other associate director in the office, but they were in facilities. So that's who I got paired with, because there was no one else at my level. And so it worked out. It was great. They had experience in residence life at the time, but it was nice to get an outside perspective. And so I think similar to what Kaitlyn said in terms of how we choose them, we ask people to do it. We don't force them to do it, because that's not going to be good for anybody. But we try to align with the position, their values. And we do ask them too, like, is there someone in your interview process that you really felt like you connected with and you want that person to be your buddy? And we've had some staff that are like, yeah, I really thought so and so was great. And so we try to pair them if that person's interested. So really, I think just depends on what that person needs, like Kaitlyn said.
I have a follow-up if I'm able to, if no one else has a question.
Sure.
So what do you think about in terms of giving buddies out before they arrive, in terms of if the person has a question? So like, again, if it's a coordinator who also is live on and they want to ask some questions that are live on related before they come in to prepare themselves, such as, hey, what do you think is the best place to do this? Or so, I'm sorry, getting a lot of phone calls. Do you suggest giving buddies out beforehand before they move in and start their role?
Ours are assigned before they arrive.
Mhm.
I just remain, me and their supervisor just remain their main point of contact. And I think Liz has shared something similar until they get here. But they have that person's contact info to be like, So I send an email to both the buddy and the mentor, and I'm like, hey, this is your buddy. This is when they're arriving. Here's their contact information. Please reach out to them. So, like, we have a new staff member starting on Monday. She and her buddy are going to get lunch this week because she's here in Athens already. And so they're going to go grab lunch, talk about her first day, make sure she feels ready. So yes, I think it is. I would just be aware of what is the expectation before they arrive, and before they start work. And so I think just being aware of that. But I don't think any staff member willing to be a buddy in any capacity is going to have a problem like with them reaching out, asking questions ahead of time.
Mhm.
What other questions from the group? You can pop them in the chat. We have 3 more minutes.
You won't get any concerns or feedback from your departments or your institutions or even HR around the recommendations that your staff have provided in terms of like you endorsing something.
Great question.
We haven't, because whether I put it on a website or I ask them in person, they're going to get the information. So it's not been something where, that they've pushed back on because it's equal opportunity local businesses. We're not like picking one. So as you saw on the website, there's a ton of places. So it's just more like this is where we like to go. But yeah, I haven't experienced that.
Similar here. We also put who recommended it next to it. So like ours isn't on a website, but like it has a list of them and they're all linked and it says, the people who have recommended that location, and you can make a choice based on those things. But no, we actually haven't gotten pushback, which is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody want to take the final question? We have 2 minutes. I see a lot of faces out there. Who's froggy? If not, I will ask the final question to our presenters. All right. If you could give one final piece of advice to this panel, through all the technology, through all the checklists, through all the person-to-person interaction, just your personal experience managing this, if you could give one piece of advice to somebody looking to refine theirs and really get it off the ground and model to what you two have at your respective institutions, what would it be and why?
I think for me, it's focusing on the personal aspect of it. Yes, they're coming in here to do a job and they're coming to work at your university and institution and they're moving potentially to your city. But it's focusing on the fact that they are doing those things beyond just the role. And so how do you personalize it? How do you make it, we want you to be here. How do you make them feel like we are excited about their arrival and their engagement and their presence at the institution? And how do we make them feel like, yeah, we are super stoked for you to be here and ready for you to start your time with us? And so I think for me, that has been the biggest piece that we have changed is we went from a very structured checklist process to a very personalized process. And that has made every difference in the world. And that's something we've done through our whole recruitment process. We went from doing very just right down the line to very personalized, and that has made all the difference for us.
Mm-hmm. I would echo the same sentiment. I think the other piece that I would add to that is thinking about and stressing it doesn't matter what level you are, everybody needs to feel wanted and welcome. And so not forgetting your upper level staff, even if those are not positions that open all the time, thinking about that. And then what does that person need to be successful? So put yourself in their shoes. What do I need from a new city, a new place to feel at home? And make sure that you're providing recommendations and opportunities to be able to establish that at home. Because if they're not happy at home, they're not going to be happy at work. And so whatever you can do to make that transition as seamless as possible will yield the best results.
Well, y'all, thank you so much for that insight. I know I'm definitely taking some things back to my team, and I see a lot of head nods and notes being taken. So want to thank y'all for your time. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're able to take some things back to your institution and look for us.